Another week, another episode with Robbie Kroger of Blood Origins. Let's do this. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 74 of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, and I'm coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Hayden, Idaho. You want to know something sad? Here's something sad. I say it every time. I'm coming at you from the Broken Tines right here in Hayden, Idaho. This is the last episode I am recording in the original Broken Tine studio. This is the last one. We have sold our house, and coincidentally, the studio is going with it. So we are moving, and I am not disclosing where I'm going just yet, but I am going to disclose it coming up soon, and I'll keep you guys posted. I keep getting a bunch of questions about it, so I appreciate the curiosity. But for some reason, I thought it'd be fun to just kind of keep it a secret until we get out there. So as of right now, this is the final episode being recorded where this show started, where it all began, a year and a half ago or so. Where, like I said, this is episode number 74. Obviously, that doesn't count some of the bonus episodes and Schools of Septembers and things like that. So I'd say we're probably more like 90 or so episodes. But all those episodes, with the exception of the ones I've done remotely in the field, out at somebody else's place, they've all been recorded right here in this studio. So there's like some nostalgia here that I'm kind of going through as I'm recording this last intro of the last episode I'm recording here in Hayden, Idaho for at the original Broken Tine studio. I do have a new studio ready to go for the most part, and that one is a temporary studio. Honestly, I'll just be honest with you guys. The new studio is a camping trailer, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. It's pretty cool. But that's what it's going to be until construction is done. So for a while, the Broken Tine studio is going to be a Broken Tine studio on wheels, and that'll be interesting. But it'll be super cool. This episode. So with all that out of the way, I'm just like I said, I've got some mixed feelings about leaving this place. It's got a lot of sentimental value to me right here in the studio. Thanks to you guys, a year and a half later, this show is still going and it's still growing at sometimes alarming rates of speed. And I just don't know how that is. Because I'm not a very good marketer. I'm not a good promoter or anything like that. I'm not even a good podcast host. But I sure appreciate what you guys have been doing, and the show's just been growing. So, like I said, I'm feeling sentimental. I'm feeling sentimental with the whole moving out of the studio. I should probably take a picture or something as I'm doing this, but so that's what it is. This is the last episode in the studio, and then the Broken Tines is mobile after that. On that note, actually, before I get to the next part, it's important that I put it out there to let you guys know, because of the fact that we sold our house and are in the process of moving. We are going to have kind of a week where I don't put an episode out, and that's going to be next week. I'm not able to. I had another episode lined up to record. Our internet, we shut that down because, we're moving and the new internet isn't up at the new place yet, and I have to have internet to record, especially when we're doing these remote interviews and stuff like that. So I had to postpone that particular interview until I'm back at it in service with internet, because we don't have any internet right now. So we are going to have a bye week or whatever you want to call it. We're skipping, and there's not going to be an episode released next week. But That is a rare thing. I try not to miss any weeks at all, but sometimes it just happens. I'm just kind of backed into a corner with that. But I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the support. I feel like everybody's going to forgive me for missing a week. So there's that. That is that, brothers and sisters. So this week's episode, though, is not one you're going to want to miss. So I have Robbie Kroger. Robert. He is the founder of a platform called Blood Origins. And I'm sure that many of you in this audience are familiar with Blood Origins. But Robbie is, he agreed to come on the show, which I'm super thankful for, because Robbie is a very smart, very articulate, very well put together individual who is an excellent storyteller. And he's taken all these talents that he has, and he's putting them into the Blood Origins platform, which has at the center of it a mission to spread the truth, to share the truth about hunting and share the truth about hunters. And that's their mission. It's not muddied water. It doesn't go beyond that. Their mission is very simple: to spread the truth behind hunting. Our roots as hunters, our urges or our motivations for hunting, all that kind of stuff that boils down to just sharing the truth about hunting to the folks that don't understand it, therefore are subject to falling victim to these anti-hunting organizations that feed them a constant flow of anti-hunting propaganda. And so his mission is to counter that in a way. And you guys know, if you've listened to my show, that is what is near and dear to my heart, because my mission is along those lines as well, where I am alarmed and I am worried about the future of hunting because of what is up against us with the anti-hunting movement. And, there's a lot of platforms that talk about public land and conservation and habitat improvement, wildlife this, and all those kind of things. But there's not a lot of voices out there that kind of have more of that focus on the anti-hunting side of things, and I think that's important. I think that's super important, and we need to pay attention to it. So Robbie is, like I said, he's from South Africa, and he came to the States as a young man, and he became a hunter, and he's a very curious man. He's a very curious individual, and so he's always after these answers and wanting to hear the stories behind people and what they do and what motivates them. And so out of that curiosity that's just natural to him, he became curious about the origins of hunting and why there is this motivation and this urge and this primal thing that gets into people that make us want to hunt. And that's where the idea of Blood Origins came from, because he too is alarmed with what we're up against in the future. And we see things that go against what we believe as real hunters really damage us. And so him and I have a really good conversation about all these things. And the cool part about it is Robbie is so much smarter than I am. He's so much more articulate than I am. He's so much more clean in his approach than I am, where I'm like the dude that's shooting from the hip, right? I'm pulling the pistol out and I'm shooting from the hip in every direction. Robbie he's like a sniper. It's precision stuff. It's thought out, it's focused, it's clean, and it's precision. And that's why I think you guys are really going to like this episode, and you're going to get a lot out of what we talk about. And we talk about his background and what brought him to the place that he is. We talk about Blood Origins and why it was founded. We talk about his grandpa, who is this really, really epic hunter. And we talk about his experiences coming to the United States and learning the lifestyle and learning about public lands and things that he didn't have in South Africa, and why that's important for him in his mind and how it defines him. That's what this conversation is about, and I think you guys are going to really like it. So buckle up. Without further ado, for the last episode of the Western Huntsman podcast in the Broken Time studio right here in Hayden, Idaho. Sorry, I got distracted there. I hope I didn't scare you there. Here we go with Robbie Kroger of Blood Origins. Enjoy. Robbie Kroger. How you doing, buddy?
I'm better than I deserve. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me on.
I am really looking forward to this conversation. So I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time.
Well, man, I'm humbled that you even want to talk to me. So that's and I say that I say that with a little laugh in my voice, but I don't take things like this very lightly because I'm always completely humbled when someone says, "Hey, do you want to get on a podcast with me and hear what we have to say or what I have to say?" And so it is. I am humbled, and thank you, and I'm very much looking forward to whatever you're going to toss my way.
well, I'm going to toss a lot at you, and
okay.
and so I'm glad you're here. You've got a great message. You've got a lot of things to say that I think a lot of people need to hear, and I love the platform Blood Origins.
Yes, sir.
I'm a fan. I love the podcast. I love the everything that you guys do over there for hunting and conservation, and these are the things that we're going to talk about on this episode. But
Jim, hunting's not conservation.
That's what I heard. I've read a couple articles.
Sorry, I'm already steering. Go ahead.
You steer it any way you want, man. This is your time on the Western Huntsman here. So let's kick it off because you've got an interesting background, and it's going to be super unique in terms of comparing it to other guests I've had on the show. Tell everybody where you're from, and we're going to take it from there.
Well, I was born and raised in Lower Louisiana.
Now that's not true.
No, definitely not. I was.
You don't have a Louisiana accent.
Sometimes people think I have a Louisiana accent.
Well, you're the most. You've got the most articulate Louisiana accent I've ever heard.
That is true. There's no truer words that have been spoken right there. I am originally from South Africa. Born and raised to a family that steeped in hunting heritage. Unbelievably, to a lot of your listeners, I never got to hunt when I was in South Africa. I was raised in this town called Johannesburg, which has 8.5 million people. I shot at a couple of doves and pigeons with my father and grandfather once or twice, but that was it. No other hunting endeavors at all. I was fortunate enough I did a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Science with honors, and then I did a Master's of Science in South Africa. Mm-hmm. I'm a swamp ecologist by training. And then I came to the States. I was fortunate enough to get a PhD opportunity here in Mississippi. And that brought me to the States and continued my love of swamps as a PhD student and discovered what hunting was introduced by a good redneck friend of mine who gave me a lawn chair and a gun and said, "Sit under this tree, and if something brown walks by, shoot it." And that was my introduction to hunting. And so that was probably 2005, 2006-ish. I'm probably 25, 26, 27. No idea what hunting is, what it was. And then just sort of evolved like every hunter here in America evolves. I just happen to be a late adult onset hunter, if you want to call me that or define me that way.
Sure.
And then just, did the typical thing, got a PhD, fell in love with a blue-eyed, blonde-haired girl from Memphis, Tennessee, and got married. And then I became a professor at Mississippi State University in the Wildlife Fisheries Department for 6 years. And
at where did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I moved to. I got a professorship at Mississippi State University in the Wildlife Fisheries Department.
Good deal.
And so I moved my wife there, and we had 2 beautiful boys. And I started exploring my love of hunting a little bit more, and soon came to realize that this was something that was of interest to me, or much more than just I wrote an article once that said for love versus like, and I guess I was a like to hunter, and then I somehow transitioned into a love to hunter. And in that transition, I started thinking about my boys, and I started thinking about like, oh, geez, I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to teach my boys how to hunt. And I guess the question of like, what does it mean? Like, why do we hunt was on my brain. And I started looking around about like, where can I find information about, like, I can find information about how to hang a tree stand and where to watch the wind and how to create a food plot and all that kind of stuff. But I couldn't find much information about, like, the reasons why people hunt. Mm-hmm. And so I almost got a little, I wasn't very enamored by what I was seeing on outdoor television and Sportsman's Channel. And I got, my grandfather was a great storyteller and in the written word. And I just decided, okay, let's build this thing that is now Blood Origins, that is now spurning a life of its own. On a daily basis, things evolve and things change and things move. And that's how it started. I wanted to ask people essentially a very simple question, which is, why do you hunt? And get their story behind why they hunted. And it was almost a selfish exercise. And I thought, well, maybe there are other people out there that would be interested in understanding why people hunt. And so we just started telling people stories. And it wasn't just famous people. Yes, we have filmed a couple of famous individuals, but we've also filmed Joe Blow down the street that you don't know from a bar of soap. And
I'm always amazed at the information and stories you can get out of somebody that other people don't know. They don't have to be some well-known hunting celebrity or something along those lines to really pick some good information. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, because I think that, one of our taglines is everyone has their own story, and that is very true. But sometimes, or actually maybe most of the time, you can see elements of yourself in someone else's story.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is, whether it's a guy from South Africa, a woman from Michigan, or a skateboarder from California. I think you can always find something in there if you're listening, carefully enough, and if you're in the moment of really, sort of this thought process of, what am I getting out of this, out of the story in terms of what I'm watching.
I want to go back for a minute. You'd mentioned your grandpa, and you also, I don't remember if you posted this to social media or you had written an article about your grandpa and kind of his life as a hunter. But can we talk about him for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us.
He's a man's man.
Yeah, that's what I gathered. And he was a great hunter. And it's not like you grew up hunting next to him all the time. But he did have an influence on hunting in your mind, from what I gathered out of this, what I read there. Describe your grandpa. Tell us a little bit about his background.
Well, born in Russia in 1912 in a town called Khabarovsk. And if you look at it on a map, it's north of a town called Vladivostok, which is almost as east in Russia as you can get before you go into China. Grew up in Siberia on the northern Chinese steppe in Manchuria, and almost, just had a rough life. And dad died when he was 1, and so he was raised Russian and went through several occupations in northern China by the Japanese, by the Germans, by the Russians. Wow. Escaped, went through 2 world wars essentially, and then moved his family to Mozambique. And I remember him saying he lived the heyday of 2 wildlife paradises that this world had to offer. The first one was Siberia, Mongolian steppe, Manchuria. He wrote stories of hunting pheasants, white-eared pheasants in Tibet. And then he moved to Mozambique in 1954. And he then stepped into the Mecca, essentially the heyday of African hunting. And in Mozambique at the time, there were really no outfitters. And being the gregarious individual that he was, he connected with a guy called Werner von Albensleben, who started the first outfitting company in Mozambique called Safarilandia. And Safarilandia's original 2 PHs were a guy called Harry Manners and a guy called Wally Johnson, who were both famous contract ivory hunters in Mozambique at the time. And so he got along with them, and that's just how, he hunted everything. He hunted everything but his namesake. So his name was Leo Kroger, so he never hunted a lion. But he hunted everything else. And he wrote stories, prolific story writer. And, what's interesting about that man is that he just traveled around the world. Even when he was 80 years old, he was traveling into Siberia to go salmon fishing.
Really?
Yeah, he just had a zest for life. So,
and so what kind of impact did he have on you? What was your relationship like with him as a kid?
Not much of a relationship. Think of, you're old school enough, Jim, like me, that our father's generation weren't really the lovey-dovey, hug types, right?
Oh, really?
And so, yeah. And so you can imagine my father was a dilute version of my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And so my grandfather, I'll give you an example of what my grandfather was like. He was very much a life lesson kind of guy. So when we would break for Christmas holidays in South Africa, we only get a month in South Africa. We don't get like the 3 months that you get here in the States. But he told, I can't remember how old we were. Maybe I was 8 and my brother was 6, or maybe it was 10 and 8, something like that. But he said to my father, send the grandkids to Mozambique for 3 weeks leading up to Christmas, and then the family would arrive. Mm-hmm. And those 3 weeks, we attended Dedushka's school. I don't know what else he called it. Dedushka is grandfather in Russian.
Oh, okay.
And essentially we were taught, because, in South Africa we had a maid, and just as you had domestic workers, so you didn't really make the bed or anything like that. And he was adamant, these boys are going to do all that. So we had to make the bed, we had to do laundry, we had to cook, we had fishing lessons. So we had to make all these knots all day long. We had reading classes. We had to then go off and had Portuguese classes because Mozambique was a Portuguese colony. He was doing all these things. Obviously, in hindsight, now you're like, man, he was just infusing these life lessons into you. Mm-hmm. But no, he was just he was an old school kind of guy. You didn't really have a relationship, grandfather to grandson. There wasn't really a relationship there.
What would you say that where you learned the most from Grandpa was from the writings that he left behind?
You could say that. It's interesting. Like, for instance, the letter, right? So the letter is, when I say the letter is this thing that started Blood Origins. He wrote it to me on a typewritten piece of news I'm trying to find it right now quickly. On a typewritten letterhead in 1992. So I was 14 years old, 15 years old, and I'd thought about wanting to hunt. And he wrote this letter to me. And in the first bits of the letter, it says, it was indeed a surprise to hear that you're keen to become a hunter. It must be, quote unquote, in the blood. I'm glad that you broached the subject yourself. Otherwise, I might have been accused of leading you astray. And you would have thought that the rest of the letter, because it's 2 pages, and it's on that old school rice paper, right, that they used to put in typewriters, that he would have waxed philosophically or poetically on different types of hunts, right, that you would experience.
That's what I would expect, yeah.
But the entire rest of the letter is about gun safety.
No kidding.
Yep.
That is super telling. So that's what he valued. That's what was important to him in terms of messaging for his grandson.
Yeah. He was a unique individual. Let's say that.
I love that story. And correct me, did you guys do a video about this topic, Robbie, or was that?
If you go to my episode, so my episode started Blood Origins. So if you go to season 1, episode 1, that's where you'll see the letter.
That's where I saw it. Yep. And it's been a while since I watched that, but I was super intrigued with it and kind of like the impact of that letter and how it developed into what you now call blood origins, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But I want to go back, not to shift gears too drastically, but I do want to go back to something else you said. What in the world is a swamp ecologist?
It's wetlands, right? So wetlands is my jam. I am a wetland ecologist. So when I was 16 years old, I went to this place called the Okavango Delta, and it's in Botswana, and it's a wilderness paradise. And what happened is tectonic forces shifted the Okavango River from deltaing into the side of an ocean, like most rivers do, to deltaing into a desert. And so it just disappears into a desert. It's a magnificent wilderness. And the system is oligotrophic, which means it is nutrient poor. So the water is crystal clear. And I remember going across one of these huge open water expanses between islands and looking down into the water, and I could see 10, 12 feet down into the water column. I could see hippo footprints on the bottom.
Wow.
And I could see like trails in the detritus layer where they were constantly walking, kind of deal. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of a wetland. I fell in love with the idea of a swamp and what it held and all the fascinating creatures associated with it. And I left that place and knew exactly what I wanted to study, and that was I wanted to study swamps. And so,
I was reading something recently. Can't place the article in my mind, but it talked about how wetland is like a fancy name for swamp, and they're kind of one of the same. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Wetland, swamp, bayou, pretty much any piece of water that touches land, essentially, you can call a wetland. Like a riparian area is a wetland. There's just all sorts. Prairie potholes are wetlands. Your back floodplains, your floodplain lakes are wetlands. It's really just the features that go alongside what happens when water sits in a place.
Yeah.
It changes the soil type, it changes the vegetation, and you've got water, essentially. And that's what defines really what a wetland is.
It's like this complicated thing too, and I'm assuming that's probably one of the benefits to living in Mississippi. You've got a lot of swampland around there.
That's right.
Yeah,
lots of swamps in Mississippi and Louisiana.
And yep, for sure. And so I was stationed in North Carolina with the military, and I when I got out there, I didn't know I'd never seen a real swamp. A kid coming from out west, we had things that we would call swamps, but they were only swamps like 3 months of the year, So I get out into North Carolina, and I'm kind of learning the terrain and all these things, and I'm learning what a swamp is, and it's a very unique thing. And like you said, it's super diverse in terms of what lives in the swamp, what thrives in the swamp between the vegetation and the wildlife, and I learned that I don't care for them too much, just because I don't like water moccasins and I don't like alligators, and that's what I ran into in North Carolina a few times.
Yep, exactly.
So, do you do anything with that now, or is that kind of just something that kicked you off in life, and now you've got other interests and places that you're in terms of like a day job?
Yeah, no, my day job is I'm a chief scientist of a small consulting company, and pretty much my day job consists of being sort of a generalist restoration ecologist. And so I still deal with wetlands, I still deal with swamps, but I've expanded my sort of restoration repertoire, if you want to call it that. And I help the state really work with oyster reefs and artificial reefs and building swamps and building marshes and buying land and managing land and talking about sea turtles and dolphins and all sorts of things. So that's what I do as a day job.
Okay. And then I don't know how you have all the time with a day job like that to put together blood origins on top of that. Do you sleep?
Yeah, it's pretty much
too.
I do not sleep very much. No, I do not. But no, it's just a genuine passion, and you've got, luckily last year we turned Blood Origins from being a simple brand I don't know what you would call Blood Origins. It's difficult to put a moniker to it.
It is, and it's. I know what you mean, because and the like universal term I found for a lot of stuff like similar to what I do and what you do, I just call it all a platform. It's a platform, because from your platform, you're putting out these insanely good, very insightful videos. You do other work for hunters and spreading the message. You do the podcast, you do all these things, and it's all derived from this one platform. And I want to talk about that, because I think a lot of people know Blood Origins, and they might have some, they're either like super fans or, kind of like me, that I really do follow it, and I watch what you put out, and I really enjoy the message behind it. And then I think there's other people that are like familiar with it, but really don't know what it is that Blood Origins is trying to achieve. So on that note, can you explain, like, what is the mission of Blood Origins?
Yeah, the mission is very simple. We convey the truth about hunting. And if you want to expand it, the truth about hunters.
And I love that message, and I love that mission. What I want to know is, when you say we convey the truth about hunters and hunting, what is it that you feel like makes it necessary to convey that truth? Where did this idea come from, and the motivation to have a mission that is very specific like that? Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. There is a reason why you ask the non-hunting majority what they think about hunters. Your typically response is that, oh, we're just a bunch of redneck killers. Mm-hmm. And that perception is starting to lead to an erosion of our hunting lifestyle across the world, really, not just America. And yes, your audience is American. You probably have a couple of international listeners, but for the vast majority, it's American. And yes, they see the folks coming after hunting rights, across the West, in California, New York, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But it's happening in the UK, it's happening in New Zealand, it's happening in Australia, it's happening everywhere. And you sort of have to sit back a little bit and go, why is there this whole like all out blitz against this lifestyle that we hold dear so much, that we actually respect wildlife, we actually use the meat. We go and hunt for adventure. We hunt for solace. We hunt from a spirituality perspective. We hunt from a mental, physical health perspective. And sooner rather than later, what you'll find is that the hunting industry has pigeonholed itself into focusing on one thing, and that is the kill. And so it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out why then the perception of hunters is that we're just a bunch of redneck killers. Because we haven't bothered to tell the truth. We haven't bothered to convey our true heart about why we go hunting and what hunting does for wildlife and what it does for communities, what it does for economics, what it does for health.
It's such a difficult message to convey in a way,
of course,
especially for people that they're not. Hunting isn't their thing, right? And so,
correct.
When you think about, like, for me, I always look at hunting as this unexplainable need within my soul that needs to be fulfilled. It's like this itch that needs to be scratched, and it's not about killing a deer. It's everything that goes into getting to the point where I'm notching that tag. And it's this thing that I always have such a hard time, because your mission with Blood Origins, it's not super dissimilar as to the mission with the Western Huntsman, other than you really, really narrow it down. You really narrow it down to conveying the right message, where my mission is more kind of bringing hunters to a point in which they could start agreeing a little bit more as a whole and as a community, and having the passion behind this lifestyle to protect it. And so I think that what I really like about your mission is you're not focused on the hunting community. That's not
That's
really
correct.
what your audience is. Who is your audience?
So when we talk about people, we split people into three categories. We split them into hunters, and let's just call that 10% of the population. We split them into anti-hunters. Let's call that another 10% of the population, and then the middle ground, which is 60%, 80%, sorry, which is non-hunters, and that's who our audience is.
Man, I was concerned. I was like, man, I don't know what kind of PhDs they hand out over there in Mississippi, but
my math wasn't too good on that. I apologize.
No, I'm totally kidding.
And so our message is specifically aimed at the non-hunting audience, and here's the result of that mission. When you look at Blood Origins, you look at the amount of people that follow us, and we're not asking non-hunters to follow us. Here's the difference, right? We're not building a community of followers that are non-hunters. We're building a community of followers of hunters, okay? But our engagement doesn't reflect the amount of followers we have, because our content is not built for our followers. Our content is built for the community of non-hunters that our followers engage in. And so, we put out content that is very impactful content, but it's not, dare I say, quote unquote, hunting sexy content.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're referring to. And for anybody that's listening to this that hasn't watched Robbie's videos or Blood Origins stuff that comes out on like your YouTube channel and stuff, I want to talk about this, but I don't want to shift gears just yet. You're an excellent video productionist. I don't know where that comes from.
No, I'm not. Not me.
Well, whoever you have helping you with that, whatever they're super, super good. I love them. And I geek out on that kind of stuff, because I do a podcast and stuff I pay attention to. So anyway, there's a lot of video content out there, and there's videos that you could tell people don't put a lot of time, effort, money, whatever into. And then you have content like yours that is very professional. It's very engaging, very well done. I can't say it enough. It's great stuff. So, the question that really sticks out to me when you're talking about this and kind of who you're making this for is, how is it that you get people that are in that 80% mark? And on my show, I always call them, they're not the people that are exactly anti-hunters, but they're not exactly hunters. They're the people that really don't give any thought to it on a day-to-day basis. And so my initial reaction is like, let's say I'm somebody who lives in a big urban area. I don't hunt. My family's never hunted. I've heard of people putting a deer carcass on the front of an old Ford Bronco and driving down Main Street. Left a bad taste in my mouth. But I also think that an organization like PETA is a little bit crazy. They're that kind of person. How do you get them interested enough to watch your content and engage with your content?
You will be surprised at how many people are actually watching your content that are non-hunters, number one. So you don't have to work that hard. Once your community starts growing, you're automatically engaging non-hunters. Number two, the hunters that are engaging with your content and sharing your content are always sharing it into their communities that are not just made up of hunters. They're made up of non-hunters as well. The third way we do it is we purposely go into and wage, I wouldn't say wage battle. That sounds way too dramatic. But we go in and let our opinions be heard and known about on these huge, big, non-hunting, anti-hunting platforms. So I'll give you an example. Today I waded in and punched way above our weight class again on an Instagram profile called The Real Tarzan. He is Real Tarzan with double N's at the end. He has 6.1 million followers.
Holy cow. Okay, I'm looking at this.
And I get tagged into his posts all the time because today he posted a video of elephants being shot. And it's a terrible video. There's a lot of things wrong with the video. It's not like things went wrong in the video. The people that were doing that hunting it just was the wrong setup. It looks like a cow herd of elephants. Anyway, I don't need to describe the video.
Yeah.
But it's a sensationalist video for him to drive his non-profit funding scheme. And he keeps harping on hunting the entire time.
I just found the video.
Yeah, and so we wage into that battle. There is no other non-profit waging into these big social media platforms and essentially speaking the truth. And not speaking the truth in a very confrontational, aggressive way, but rather in a very pragmatic, fact-driven, science-driven, with a little bit of emotion, with a little bit of emotion way. Mm-hmm. And so, I can guarantee you, Jim, that 10,000 people read my comment today. Maybe more.
I want to see the comment, but I don't want to.
No, you can look at the comment. The comment, and it's there's probably 11,000 comments on that post right now.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll look for it after we're talking. Otherwise, I'll be totally distracted.
But to me,
that's a huge profile.
That's a very public-facing profile that we get message out into that touch non-hunters. We probably touched 10,000 non-hunters today, 20,000, and we probably sowed a couple of seeds of thought to them saying, never really thought about it that way.
See,
didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about how you do that, Robbie, because I'm looking at this page, the real Tarzan. He's got, like you said, 6.1 million followers. One of them is Cameron Haynes. And then the Shark Damon, from Shark Tank, pops up on there for some reason. But it's interesting that the types of people that will follow that are unwittingly being fed perhaps what we would consider propaganda. And they'll take that as a truth. And I'm just using this as an example. And like my initial reaction for that is because hunting is so important to me and what I do with hunting, how my life evolves around it. I get super passionate and which turns into anger. So my response on something like that, I have to restrain myself. And because otherwise I could see myself going in very unprofessionally and making really snarky, snide comments that I think turn people off. And it's the same when anti-hunters do that as well. They'll come in and make some snarky comment and they're real snide about it and rude and kind of below the belt. And that turns people off as well. And so right. we all have to find this balance. And I think you do a really good job at coming at it from the right angle. So, and people like me appreciate that because I just want to go in and tell this guy to go fuck himself. And no, we know that's not, you know what I mean? And that's not the right approach. It's not going to achieve anything.
Right. No, I think somebody referred to us in terms of our approach as being gentlemanly.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And I think it's just, there's another element here that you got to consider is that there are a lot of people like you, like a lot of people that we don't know that are listening, that are watching what we're doing. And it's almost learning by doing, like learning by osmosis. Hey, these guys seem to interact with just a whole lot differently, right? They're not yelling, they're not screaming, they're not poking, fun at them. They're not pointing their finger at them. They're just sort of, hey, yes. Like today, that video. Be honest. Yeah, it's a terrible video.
Yeah.
I'm not going to defend the video, but the video is the bad apple. That is the bad apple in a barrel of good apples. And you chose to focus on the bad apple.
Yep.
Why are you not focusing on the real problems? Poaching, habitat loss. It's just a way of interacting to say, I'm not calling you out, but I am calling you out, but I'm calling you out in a very, very nice way.
Yeah, great point. How it's true too. But I want to talk about how we convey as hunters, as like how we can kind of unite behind your message in that approach, and how, first of all, in your opinion, what is it about hunters that they do that kind of leaves a negative connotation to the rest of the general public? The 80%. We'll call them the 80%.
Sure. I think, and there's nothing wrong with this approach. Okay, what I'm about to say, there's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're not thinking about what it looks like to a non-hunter.
Yeah.
Because what they're posting is for hunters.
Mm-hmm. And can I kind of ram that one home?
Sure.
That the point that you're making there, I think, is an underestimated topic and an underestimated point. Because you're exactly right, and I've been super guilty of this. I assume everybody knows that when you shoot a deer or an elk or a bear or whatever, the tongue pops out, and it's bloody, and the rest of the scene could look like an absolute bloodbath. For somebody who's been hunting their entire life, that's normal, right? But then again, going back to the 80% that we were talking about earlier, somebody who has never grown up around that, they've never seen that. They've possibly, many of them have never even gutted a fish. They don't understand living this close to the land and what that looks like. And so it's like traumatic for them to see something like that. And I want to expand on that.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
No, you're totally right. I'll give you an example. I spoke with a girl out of Kenya. Kenya, banned hunting back in 1977 and is almost like the bastion of green NGOs in Africa. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Very anti-hunting sentiment coming out of Kenya. She thought two things that blew my mind. She thought, as a non-hunter / anti-hunter, that Americans came to Africa because we had killed all of the wildlife in America, and now we're coming to Africa to kill theirs.
You're serious?
Serious.
Wow.
Number one. Number two was that Americans came to Africa to shoot elephants because then they could go back to America and sell the ivory for $50,000 to $70,000.
Oh, geez.
So you're right. We always have to think about context. And it's, to me, your question really was like, what can we do that can help our cause? And to me, it boils down simply to one, thinking. If we just did a little bit more thinking before we posted things, we would help hunting. And number two, if you can't think, then just ask the question of yourself, is what I'm about to do helping or hurting hunting?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can answer that question honestly, it'll stop you posting something, it'll change you posting something, and it'll typically provide a little bit more context behind what you just decided to post.
So let's define that for a minute, Robbie, because I'll give you a great example. A friend of mine and a former guest on the show, I've had him on the show, he's I've dubbed him the official tattoo artist of the Western Huntsman podcast.
Okay.
Anyway, he's
What's his name?
His name is Nate Davenport, and he's his Instagram is Anchored Nate, and he's a tattoo artist and a trad bowman. He hunts everything with a traditional bow, traditional archery. He's very, very into the archery aspect of hunting. Point being is he's been working his tail off, and finally last night, as of the date of this recording, he got himself one hell of a bear.
Nice.
It's been spring bear season here, and I mean, this isn't just some little, chump of a bear like I would probably end up with. He shot a legitimate pig, and it was a great bear. He worked his butt off for it, and I wanted to kind of share his glory. I took the picture that he had shared to our archery page that we have here in North Idaho that's kind of specific to the locals here. And what I did is I cropped the image to kind of reduce the blood in the bottom of it, so it's just kind of the bear and him behind it with his trad bow. And I posted that. In your mind, is that acceptable, or is that maybe not acceptable if we're trying to expand hunting and the education that you're trying to produce behind it?
I think the fact that you thought about it, hey, I need to crop the blood out, I need to sort of, and I hate this term, but I'm going to say it, you sanitize the picture a little bit. Not that we shouldn't. And again, here's where the rub comes, right? People will say, no, we should be able to post what we want to post.
Yeah, I am
and
who
that
I
is
am.
absolutely
like
true.
it.
I am
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. You can. And yes, we are sanitizing the post for the snowflakes out there. Okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But did it really make a difference at the end of the day, the fact that you took the place, the part that had the blood out? No. I would say even then, you would still need to provide context, right? You still need to provide, instead of just a guy that's grinning behind a dead bear and you say, great bear, somebody's going to go, well, geez, these guys just love to kill.
Yeah.
Versus what you just explained to me, that the guy's been hunting hard. He's a trad bow hunter. He's worked his tail off, spent X amount of hours out in the field, mm-hmm. X amount of days out in the field to have this one opportunity. And oh, by the way, all of the meat that's on this bear is going to be used and eaten.
And then some. When we're talking about Nate, it's in then some. This is a man that this is a real resource for him. And he's going to use every bit of that thing that he can. And again, we're preaching to the choir. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, and our listeners are 99% hunters. I have a suspicion we have some anti-hunters that tune in every once in a while just to, keep their enemies close, so to speak. And that's fine. If you're anything like me, hunting is a year-round thing for you, and we're always thinking about how to make our next upcoming season a little bit better, and one way to do that is with gear. And you guys know I'm not a big gear junkie, but I do have some important gear items that I'm always a huge fan of, and they're right here available on this show. Let's talk about Scree gear. Scree is my go-to camo. Scree is high-performance hunting attire and gear, scientifically tested camo patterns, and all backed by a great company, and I wouldn't recommend it to you if I didn't truly believe in the Scree product. They've got a complete layering system for all terrain and conditions, gear designed to adapt to the weather. It's rugged gear. It's got a lifetime warranty, VIP sizing and exchange program. You can't go wrong with Scree. Get the best out there without breaking the bank, and to make it even better, use promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. Hell of a deal. Check it out at ScreeGear.com. Next on the list is my oldest and fondest sponsor of the show is Phelps Game Calls. One thing I love about companies like Phelps Game Calls is the American success story that came out of it. And Phelps started in Jason Phelps' garage years ago, and it's now one of the premier hunting call companies on the market, and I wouldn't point you in that direction if I didn't feel like they were the best calls available. Jump on PhelpsGameCalls.com. When you find a call you like, use promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off. I promise you, you will not regret it. Hoffman Boots. Hoffman Boots is a go-to boot company I've been using for years and years and years. And the cool thing about it is I'm only on my second pair of Hoffman Explorers. I put lots of miles on my Hoffman Explorers. They're a great boot. They're not going to cost you a small fortune to get. And they have all the same guarantees and warranties that every other company out there has. If you want to be confident, guys, do not skimp on boots. Go to HoffmanBoots.com. Get you a pair of, for me, I like the 8-inch Explorers, but they also have the 6-inch. They have all sorts of different options. Check it out at HoffmanBoots.com and use promo code Huntsman10, all caps lock, for 10% off. And last but not least is Tacticam. Are you interested in filming your hunt? And are you interested in helping with conservation efforts throughout the North American continent? Well, then I got a deal for you. Tacticam is a point-of-view type kind of camera that records in 4G. They also have other products like the Film Through Scope, the FTS, and you attach that to your rifle scope and you can film your shot right there. And they have the mounts for your shoulder, for your head. You can mount it to your bow. You can mount it to wherever and whatever you want. Lots of versatility with the Tacticam. Other products include, but are not limited to, the fisheye camera, the Tacticam Spotter LR is definitely worth a look if you want to film what you're seeing through your glass while you're actively hunting and get it on camera. It's a great thing. But I think that the thing that I'm most excited about with Tacticam this year is the new Reveal cell cam that is coming out. This trail camera will send you images in real time as they're coming in. They've got like an enhanced antenna for better service. If you're like managing property or something like that, or you've got a bear bait set up somewhere that you have phone service, you can get those pictures right there to your phone. This cell cam is super, super cool. I'm really excited about it. And you can get all this at the westernhuntsman.com/gear. Go to the gear shop. You'll find all the Tacticam stuff right there. Best pricing out there on it. And what happens is we split the profitable revenue from these sales of the Tacticam gear, and half of it goes to conservation efforts, which vary depending on what quarter of the year it is. Right now we're raising money and trying to get some money over to Sportsman's Alliance. It's a great cause, and that is what's going to go down when you shop for Tacticam gear at thewesternhuntsman.com. So go over there and check it out and get you a camera. Guys, let's get back into it. I sure appreciate it. The point to that is, because I think that that's important to define what we're talking about. I'm with you on that. I agree. I have made the dudes that hung that deer upside down in their garage and poured beer down the chest cavity. I've made those boys famous, and I've tried to get them to come on to the show to explain themselves. And I guess if I was in their shoes, I'd say no as well. Well, they just they don't say yes or no. They don't respond. But
right.
Point being is that's the kind of stuff that rubs me the wrong way, and I'm a hunter, so I can't imagine what that does to somebody that knows nothing about hunting. And so that's what I want to just spend a few minutes talking about. Like, what is in your mind, what is in your opinion acceptable kind of hunting content to because social media, I hate to always put this on social media, but social media is a big deal, and it's a big part of the equation here. And it has the potential to shed light negatively and shed light positively, and then it shed light in a way that is just kind of neutral. And I want to talk about, like, what do you think is acceptable? What do you think what takes it from being a tasteful enough picture that it won't put a negative connotation in anybody's mind, but still get the point across of, hey, look at all the work I just did, and I was able to notch a tag. Here's the evidence. Make sense?
Yeah, to me, it really boils down to respect, because I think that's where the fight comes from the other side, is when you show disrespect of wildlife, or show wildlife in a bad light. That's where we get into trouble. And so anything that we can do to show more respect for the wildlife, the game that we chase, the better it's going to be. And social media is not going anywhere. It's only going to get harder. It's only going to get more restrictive for us. It's only going to get bigger. Right now, I think we're not even at the height of social media yet. I can't believe what it's going to look like in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. Because these accounts are just going to grow and grow and grow and grow, So we have to it is going to be a battleground. And to me, that's what I see it as. I see it as the next battleground for hunting is social media. And that's why we post so much content into the social media space, because we're trying to drown out. We're not big enough yet, but we're trying to drown out, as you said, the beer chugging deer guys.
Yeah. And there's so much to combat there. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No. That's exactly what I was about to finish. Just to say, that's unfortunately hunters still will perpetuate the deer chugging guys over our type of content. And that's something we need to think through. Again, if we just did a little bit more thinking, we did a little bit more, provided a little bit more thought to what we do, and showed a little bit more respect.
That the point that I was trying to make there, it ties right into what you're saying there, because I think that sometimes we don't even know as hunters what we are up against and the magnitude of what's out there and what's coming down the pike. I'll give you a great example. Growing up in South Africa, did you guys watch Crocodile Dundee when you were kids?
Oh yeah, loved it.
Me too. It was
Absolutely loved it.
I wanted to be the dude that would pull out a big knife and say, "That ain't no knife. That's a knife." And it was a big deal. Well, I have a pal. Years ago, we were talking. He was from Australia, and he pointed out to me something that I'd never even thought about. But he was saying, when you watch that show, there's a part in the movie where Crocodile Dundee and the lady, they're woke up in the middle of the night by a bunch of gunfire, and they go running over there, and it's these redneck Australian guys out with spotlights shooting kangaroos and just leaving them. And what he told me, he's like, Jim, when I was in Australia growing up and everything, that kind of stuff had never happened. No, we don't know anybody that did that. Not to say that it never happened, but for him, who was within, he grew up as a hunter, and everybody he knew, they were all hunters, and they were all lovers of the land and lovers of nature and lovers of the wildlife. He said that they had this big network of people, and nobody, in fact, the community he was in was slightly bent out of shape about that scene in the movie. Because it was such a frowned upon thing, but the way that it's portrayed in the movie, it's that's the norm. That's what hunters are. They go out with spotlights, drinking beer, telling loud, nasty jokes, and spotlighting kangaroos, shooting them, and then just leaving them for dead.
Right.
That kind of stuff gets into the minds of people that may not even realize now, 30, 40 years later after that movie comes out, that's what's in their mind.
Exactly. A complete swing of perception based on, Hollywood gentrification of hunting.
Yep. And Bambi, let's not even get started on Bambi.
Bambi, Elmer Fudd.
Yeah, Elmer Fudd.
You can just keep going and going and going.
And so I could see how easily it would be for somebody growing up without having anything to do with hunting in their life, how they can get this negative connotation built up, and then to really feed into that mindset is what we were just talking about. Rednecks chugging beer through the chest cavity of a dead deer hanging in their garage. Boom.
Exactly.
Hunters are all out there, bloodthirsty killing rednecks. They have no concern for the wildlife, and in fact, they kind of put it in this way of, there's this adversary kind of mentality with hunters against, like, we hate deer, we hate elk, we hate bears, we just want to go kill them all for no reason. Where in reality, I know of no other group that loves animals more than hunters, to include the people that are a little misguided in the hunting world, or they're misguided in terms of hunters, such as some of these folks that may work in a zoo, and they're like a zoologist, and they think that they love the animals the most, right? And they hate hunters. I'm not saying they love animals more or they love animals less than a hunter, but what I am saying is for a real hunter, it's not an adversarial, what's the word I'm looking for, position we have against our game animals. Does that make sense? We don't hate them.
No, exactly. And again, you're just speaking around the idea that we have failed to convey the truth about hunting and hunters.
So let's get back to the mission of Blood Origins, and kind of tell us about where you guys are going. What is the focus right now? And I know that's a pretty wide net I'm casting, isn't it?
Well, no, it's just we morph, and we are ever evolving in terms of what we're doing, the types of stories we're telling. We're always at our heart, always going to have the mission of conveying the heart of a hunter to the non-hunting audience, which is our Blood Origins episodes. But we've also started getting into the documentary space for showing different parts of the truth tied to hunting, whether or not that's, conservation or animal wildlife relocations, or the impact on communities, or the impact on jobs, or the impact on populations. or the impact of character. All those things, we're getting into that space. We're getting into the space of implementing conservation projects, direct implementation, i.e., you know where your money goes. You donate to X, like you donated to Hunters for the Hungry in Wyoming. You saw me write a $22,000 check on Instagram and sent it to the Wyoming Wildlife Federation that is going to feed underserved communities in the state of Wyoming by hunters donating their meat to that cause.
Yep.
And people can tangibly feel it. They can see it. They know exactly where their money went. And we've got a website that has full financial transparency tied to it. And yeah, it's just bigger and data storytelling. We've got several projects on the back burner right now. I've got several, and this is where I laughed at you in terms of I'm not a production guy, but I hire, all I am is a vision guy, and then I hire the best production guys that my money can buy, and I don't have much of it. But I've got someone working on a project in Arizona right now. I've got guys in North Carolina editing stuff. I've got guys in the UK editing stuff right now. I've got a guy in New Jersey that just sent me an introduction today on a documentary film called Everyone Deserves to Play, which is one of our conservation projects from last year, where we built a soccer field in rural South Africa. And we're going to storytell the crap out of it because we as hunters don't do a very good job of storytelling.
Yes.
And that intro is unbelievable. It is like, wow, can't believe that's what it looks like. But when you hire, you just got to find the guys that think outside the box. Like, for instance, this guy in New Jersey, he doesn't hunt. And so he brings a different lens to the editing process. Because again, we want this to touch non-hunters, and so as you so poignantly pointed out, there's things that we take for granted as hunters that non-hunters don't know, and so having a non-hunter edit and put together a story sort of fleshes those little bits and pieces out.
Yeah,
because he doesn't know himself.
Yeah, it's going to be powerful. Yeah, that'll be powerful for sure. What year did you start Blood Origins?
2017.
Okay, so 2017, you're a few years into it here. How do you feel like it's going so far?
Better than I expected, I guess.
Is it?
The answer is no, obviously. Any driven individual will tell you that they want it to be bigger and better than it is as it currently stands.
Oh, absolutely.
But, if you'd asked me 4 years ago, if we were going to be a non-profit that was essentially self-sustaining at this point and having already implemented 6 or 7 conservation projects across the world, I would not have, if you had asked me to write down, like, where would you be in 5 years? That would not have been, none of that would have been on the page that I would have written down.
I would hope that 5 years ago you would have written down, you know what, I want to be a guest on the Western Huntsman podcast. Right?
Oh, that would have been number one.
I appreciate that.
That would have been number one.
I appreciate you telling a little, stretch of the truth for me. It helps.
Hey, we just convey the truth, Jim. No matter how small the truth may be.
I love your perspective on things, Robbie, and I would agree. I think that it is going exceptionally well for you guys. I feel like there has been a lot of growth. You have a lot of support. I don't ever hear anything negative said about Blood Origins, and that is saying something in the hunting industry, right? I mean, I every time I get an episode out live, I get a handful of emails that are just, oh, you shouldn't have said that, and you don't know what you're talking about, and rah, 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 rah. And it goes on, and I expected that, and it's okay, but I don't see anybody.
You may get your first negative comments based on me being on your podcast now.
I might. You never know. What kind of riffraff are you hanging out with, Jim?
No, they're just going to say, why are you bringing on these guys with all these this guy with a foreign accent? I can't understand.
Yeah. Well, I was a little concerned because you sound so much smarter than I do with that accent. It goes a long way. Could you tell everybody, and I apologize, for some reason I'm drawing a blank here as I'm asking this, but the program, and I'm on this program where I pay a certain amount of money to the cause.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
I don't remember, can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's our supporters program. And so the reason we built the supporters program was very simple. If you follow Blood Origins or you've never followed Blood Origins, you need to know that we don't belong to anyone, but we belong to everyone. And so to maintain the integrity and the authenticity of who we are and what we do, I wasn't going to take money from industry to belong to a gun company or a bullet company or a boat company. And that's why I raided my savings account for essentially 3 to 4 years before we turned into a nonprofit and now are sustaining ourselves from bringing donations in. Mm-hmm. But I developed all these relationships with all these brands that have said, we love what you do. How can we help? And so we created the supporters program because I didn't want to create something where you got a magazine or you got a membership or anything like that. I just wanted people to support us in driving the content that we do, and as a mean of thanks. And that support is the cost of a cup of coffee a month, $3 a month, $4 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever you want to do.
I don't remember what amount I did.
A minimum of $3. I don't know how much you did. Do you want me to find out?
No. That's okay. I think I just did like the 3 or 5 or something like that.
$3 or $3.15 a month or something like that. Super simple. We don't expect anything more. And for that, you get put into a drawing every month for 5 to 10 giveaway items. And we're talking about hunts all over the world. Gift cards. We've got a phenomenal trad bow coming that the guy is building for me. It's got like rattlesnake skin handle. It blows me away. I have people reaching out to us that just said, "Hey, can we help you? Can I give a wallet? Can I give a sling? Can I give a pack of broadheads? Can I?" And so we're just rolling that on downstream to the people who've decided to support us. And the guy out of the UK who's giving $3.15 a month is going to go pig hunting in Oklahoma, and he's going to take his grandfather with him.
Huh. That's fantastic.
It's just that's our supporters program. So that's what we started, and that's what's helping us do what we do.
And it's such for those of you listening, like $3 or $5 a month. I mean, come on. I went into the gas station the other day, and I'm getting ready to. I was on my way up to that bear camp. In fact, I'm stopped in there, and I'll admit it. I bought some of that really bad for you kind of food that they sell in gas stations. Because I was like starving, and I'm like, man, I just don't want to I don't want to hit the hills feeling like this, but I'm gonna feel like shit in an hour after eating this crap. But
right.
Anyway, I'm a sucker for it, so I get some of that, and I'm looking there, and they in Idaho they were selling a pack of cigarettes for like over $6, and I didn't. So you think about that. A pack of smokes is $6 for those of you out there smoking. That's 2 months worth of supporting this program.
100%.
A cup of coffee. My wife goes down to this espresso stand like almost daily. These coffees are $5. These things are $5. And those kind of things, when you put it into perspective, it's nothing. Like it's nothing. And so and somebody might be thinking about this. Well, what's $3 going to accomplish? Well, when you have 20,000 people giving $3 a month, imagine how much. That's the only problem. That's the only problem with recording with the phone like we're doing. I just had an incoming call there I had to delete. Sorry about that. Anyway, but when you have 20,000 supporters sending in $3 a month, and the impact that can make for putting out the right kind of messaging for hunters to protect our way of life down the road, it's amazing. You're brilliant for starting this kind of program because we as hunters needed this. And so,
20,000 people is certainly a lofty goal. I wish we could get there, but let me do this.
You're gonna get there.
Since you've given me the platform and your podcast, how about I do this? How about I challenge your listeners? If your listeners decide to sign up for the supporters program, whatever amount of dollars they want. And we'll do this. I don't know when this podcast will drop, but we'll say for a month after the podcast drops. This will be the people that are eligible from your podcast. If they sign up for the supporters program, there's a little note section there. If they put in the note section that we came from the Western Huntsman, I'll do a separate little giveaway for just your supporters. We may throw a Blood Origins t-shirt, or I'll just look through what we have in our supporters program, and I'll pick randomly someone, and we'll send someone from your audience a winning piece of swag or gear or whatever, or both.
That's awesome. And Robbie, I'll do you one better. Whatever you do send them, I will pay for it. So if it's a t-shirt item, I want to pay full retail price for it, and make sure that end is covered so that this actually generates, some actual profit.
No, we've got that covered already. We've got that covered already. I appreciate.
So it's already donated?
Yes, sir.
Man, what am I going to do with you?
We are. We've got it. Like as I said, we've got amazing people that support us, like you, that have just said, how can we help you? And we just said, you can help us by, letting us flow the stuff downstream. So yeah, if your audience jumps on the supporters program, puts we came from the Western Huntsman in the notes section, we'll put them in a little prize pool, and we'll send them some cool stuff.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that, Robin. And I just want to kind of finalize this as a plug for this program, guys. For those of you listening, I have been racking my brain for a couple of years as to figure out how to counter some of the messaging that comes out of the anti-hunting movement. And what I mean by that, you guys have heard me say a million times, you can't argue on Twitter and make the kind of point that an anti-hunter can make. Because an anti-hunter can jump on there and post a picture of somebody that just shot a giraffe and make it look really bad and post two sentences that sheds this really negative light on all hunters across the board, across the world. We can't come back and counter that in a tweet. It doesn't work. And when we try, if it's even a platform such as Facebook, where we don't have the limited number of letters and whatever I don't know what they call. I don't have Twitter, so I don't know what those are called. But I know they limit how many words you can use. Characters. Okay, there you go. Well, I'm a character, so this works out. But the point I'm trying to make, even on Facebook, where you don't have a limited amount of characters you can use, going in there and trying to make some long drawn out scientific explanation as to what hunting has done for our wildlife and conservation efforts over the last 100 years or so, the eyes are gonna glaze over to most people that are not hunters, and they're the people you're trying to counter know this. They know that it is very difficult to counter an easy tweet that is super powerful from their end. They know it's very difficult for us to counter that. So I've been trying to rack my brain with how to come up with some kind of platform or messaging or a way to expose the anti-hunting movement for what they are, which is it's propaganda. And you know it, and I know it, and it's a very easy way to garner a bunch of donated money that actually doesn't do anything to help wildlife and conservation efforts.
Yeah.
And so
it's the real Tarzan posts.
Yeah. And it's a fraud, it's a sham, and it's a cottage industry where they can generate all this revenue and make a big impact on our lives that we don't want. The point I'm trying to make, guys, is Robbie at Blood Origins has found a way to counter that in an effective manner. And so I'm like almost pleading with you. I am pleading with you to get on there and sign up for that $3 supporter program or $5 however. I don't know how much money you guys are making. If you're rolling in the dough, let's bump it up a little bit. But for just anybody on any income can afford $3 a month. And so I'd encourage you guys to do that. And from my perspective, I'd appreciate it. I get nothing out of it, Robbie. Let's make that clear right now to the audience. It's not,
absolutely.
I get nothing out of it. This is simply for the overall mission of hunters coming together under this platform of Blood Origins to help spread the messaging in a positive way.
Indeed. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, Robbie, I have really gotten a lot out of this episode. I do have one more question for you that's kind of more on a personal basis. Is that okay?
Sure.
You got time?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
What was the biggest difference coming from growing up in South Africa to the United States? What was like something that it surprised you? You maybe didn't expect it. And B, what would you say like the biggest difference is lifestyle wise or whatever? That's something I'm always curious about.
So I'll say that the biggest difference, this may seem a little silly, but it's what hit home the most, is variability.
Okay.
And what I mean by variability is when you go to South Africa and you go buy bread, you have brown bread and you have white bread. That's it. Typically, it's not even sliced. Sometimes it is sliced. But I remember as a kid, you'd buy the loaf of bread and you'd slice it behind once you bought your bread because there was a bread slicer. And I remember walking into Kroger, which is one of our supermarkets here in the Southeast.
Yeah, we got those.
And walked into the bread aisle and I was like, where's the brown bread? Because I had 80 different kinds of bread in front of me. And so that was something that was very, very different. For instance, potato chips. We had, 3 kinds of potato chips growing up. Tomato sauce, which is like ketchup flavored chips.
Mm-hmm.
And I call them chips, and we call them crisps here. But then salt and vinegar and plain, and then it was a chutney, which is a kind of like, it's a South African thing, and that's what the kind of chip flavors we had. And here you have 40 different kinds and 50 different kinds of
yeah,
chips.
Like chips have their own aisle here.
Yeah, exactly. So that was one of the biggest differences. But one of the things that I think your latter question was, what are the things that not surprised you, but that you enjoyed the most and that is surprising to people, is that the standard of living that you have here in the United States. And people talk about crime here in the United States, and I laugh sometimes when they talk about crime because you don't have a crime problem until people start warring themselves away from each other, and they start putting razor wire on top of the walls, or they put electric fencing on top of the walls, and you start putting panic buttons in all your rooms, and you start sort of locking yourself away, the bedroom away from the rest of the house in case they break into the rest of the house.
Oh, geez.
But that's how we live in Johannesburg, South Africa. That's just standard living practice. And coming here and the freedoms that you have, and living in a very small town in Mississippi when I first got here, I was very, not intimidated is not the word, but it was very different to see people being so trustworthy. Football games, leaving everything out, like TVs and food and very expensive things just lying around, knowing that nobody was going to steal it.
And
that's
like, interesting perspective.
So it's just, that's what, and don't get me wrong, it's not a bad lifestyle. It's just the circumstance in which you live in, and that's what you just deal with, and that becomes normal way of life until you find out that your normal way of life is not really normal. And you get to live in a place like America in which you don't have those worries. You have a very good standard of living, even though you don't have to earn very much. And then you have all of the privileges that go along with being an American citizen and living in America, including the right to hunt, the hunting access, the public lands, the ability for me to leave my house right now and 20 minutes later be on public ground and be able to walk with a loaded weapon.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world.
Nope.
It only happens here. And so when we fight every day for hunting rights and our lifestyle through Blood Origins, I do it because of the perspective that I bring to the table, because I didn't have any of it. And I'm not going to let my sons not have this thing that I am privileged to have here in America. And so it's I sometimes understand why someone goes, well, why it'll never happen here. It'll never happen. And I say, I get your perspective, because you've never experienced a place where it was gone already.
That's what I was going to ask you, Robbie, is do you feel, and not necessarily just hunters, but Americans in general, but specifically hunters, since this is a hunting podcast, do you feel like that's a blind spot for us here in America? Like for me personally, I've been all over the world. I've been to Africa, not South Africa, but I've been up on the northern end of there. Anyways, is that a blind spot for Americans? Do we kind of, because we haven't experienced some of the, what I would consider oppression kind of things, right? Where you don't have the right to bear arms, where there are no public lands, and the only royalty or rich folks or designated people, whatever, they own the wildlife. There's no public ownership of anything. There is no public ownership of public lands. There's no public ownership of wildlife. Things like that. I don't know if I'm asking this the right way, but do you feel like that's maybe a blind spot to us as Americans, and why we take advantage of it?
Well, I don't think it's that you take advantage of it. I think it's a lack of perspective, in which you don't know what you have until you've lost it, and you haven't lost it yet. So you really don't have the ability to see in a rearview mirror, because it's never happened. And I think then it also causes a false sense of security, in that, it'll never happen, which is, it'll never happen. And, here's the first cut X, here's the first cut Y. Lo and behold, 10 cuts later, you're like, we're not allowed to hunt anymore.
Yeah. Wow. It happened.
What just happened?
Yeah. What just happened?
Mm-hmm. Right. And why did it happen? Because nobody was thinking, what we're doing may be sending the wrong message about who we are as hunters.
Because hunters in Idaho or hunters in Mississippi weren't paying attention when hunters in California were getting screwed out of their bear season, right? And they were trying to, and I'm using that as just an example. See, I told you I wasn't as articulate as you were, or you are. I just say they get screwed out of it. But, a legitimate concern this last winter was California banning bear hunting. And it goes against the science. It goes against our rights. It goes against so many things. But I think that hunters in, like I said, Alabama, Mississippi, Idaho, Texas, Colorado, anywhere, they're not really paying a lot of attention to that, because they think that that's a California problem. But the problem is, it starts somewhere like California and spreads to places like us.
I think you're going to see over the next 5 years, you're going to see erosion of hunting rights or hunting lifestyles in the West. Your California, your Washington State, your Oregons, you're going to see an erosion of hunting rights and lifestyle and access in the Northeast. Maybe not so much Maine, but all of those states, including New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, all of those little states up there, you're going to see a stronghold and an increase in hunting access in the Southeast and in the Midwest. And you're going to see the battleground is going to be the Mountain West where you live. And so you're going to see we're going to get knocked down in Colorado. We're going to lose a battle in Colorado, and then we're going to win a battle in Montana. We're going to lose a battle in Utah, and we're going to win a battle in Idaho. So that would be my prediction of what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Robbie, do you ever come out west to hunt?
Yeah, I do. I have, unfortunately, with Blood Origins, we don't don't tend to hunt as much as I would like, because it's what happens when you fight for something you believe in. You don't get to do it anymore.
Isn't there some serious irony to that? Because I know what you mean.
Yeah, but I'm trying to fix it.
Good, you should, because if you ever want to come out to Idaho and hunt elk, you know where to. You know my phone number.
Yes, sir. I do.
I've got a great spot for you. So come on out and see me, and I want you to keep me apprised as to what anybody, or I'm sorry, not what anybody, what anything I can do from my end and my platform and from this podcast, if there's anything we could do to help you in your cause, we're here for you.
Sir.
And
Thank you.
And I genuinely mean that. I think that more hunting entities, so to speak, if that's a way to put it, should be like that. In terms of supporting each other and being out there and helping, I don't know, raising tides, they raise all ships. So
yes, sir.
I think it's a super important thing. So guys listening to this, make sure you're jumping on. Where can they find the supporters program? Is it just bloodorigins.org?
Yep, bloodorigins.org. We have a link tree in our Instagram.
Yep.
That's where you can find us.
Guys, I'm going to link the website and the link tree into the show notes on this. This is actually coming out this week, Robbie.
Fantastic.
And so it's gonna hit the airwaves here soon. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I feel like we covered a lot of good ground. I could do this a bunch of times with you, man. I'd love. We'll have to plan one in the future.
For sure. We'll have. I'll be happy to come back.
Sounds great. Well, again, Robbie, thanks a bunch. And we will be in touch, and you take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Much appreciated.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.